I'm Glenn McGinnis, and this is Outburst. On the program, should people who received CERB benefits be forced to pay it back?
I think they should be paid back if they weren't entitled to it.
You should give it back.
I think that's just going to exacerbate the problems that they're having right now.
You give it, and now you want to take it away?
But first, the war on drugs continues to be an uphill battle in this country, with addictions on the rise and overdose fatalities off the map. In an effort to curb this, the federal government will be allowing the province of British Columbia to decriminalize the possession of small amounts of illegal drugs, which would include heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamines, just to name a few. It's a 3-year experimental program, and similar programs have seen success in countries like the Czech Republic, Portugal, and the Netherlands. But would it work here? Our question. Should possessing small amounts of illegal street drugs be decriminalized?
It's a tough question, actually. I'm a believer that free markets, affects not only for drugs, everything, but in this topic I am a little bit too conservative, so I wouldn't say that this is the right choice to distribute drugs, whatever it is and in whatever amount. So basically it should be restricted, not delivered like that, I think. It just seems to me that we're almost encouraging it and sanctioning it rather than saying it's not the right thing to do.
I sort of linked it back to prohibition. When people were told in the old days that you can't do something, they went ahead and, oh gosh, something, yeah. So I don't see anything wrong with a small amount, well policed in a way.
That's a tricky question, the decriminalization of street drugs, because we are in the crisis. So my stance on that is very I want the opioid crisis to obviously halt. I don't think I have enough information on that. I think this small decriminalization might allow people to come forward and talk more about if they have that or not, so it might help with that, but I don't know enough to have a good stance on that.
I think it should be, and I think that folks that are committed to using the product are not able to make decisions on their own, and so let's give them a break.
Yes, I do. It's actually proven in the Netherlands that when you decriminalize drugs to a certain degree and you put certain steps to make it so it's dealt in a healthier way, most people actually, their consumption tends to go not down, I wouldn't say, but it becomes just, you don't have as many problems on the streets.
I think that it should, and the reason I say that is because the current strategy that we've had for many, many years clearly is not achieving the results that it was intended to achieve. There's some people out there that need some real help, and maybe if there were different avenues to get to them and get them the help that they need, we might actually move forward on solving this problem.
Yeah, I don't think it's changed the problem with drugs existing or with helping the people that may not want to be using drugs. I think it's just penalizing those individuals and not solving the underlying problems.
I certainly think that possessing small amounts of street drugs should be decriminalized. We have an overpopulated jail system. We also we would be able to tax and regulate certain things. It's also small amounts are mistakes that can be made by people. Mistakes are made throughout life, and if there are certain things that can be, expunged or taken care of without having to affect their life fully, I think it would be important.
Absolutely. Decriminalization of all drugs kind of empowers everyone who suffers from addiction, and lack of access to kind of facilities that would help them get over that addiction breaks down those barriers. When we criminalize small amounts of drugs, it's more fodder for police, and it creates more crime that's really not crime at all. It's unnecessary. So yes, I'm 1,000% for complete decriminalization.
The wisest opinion in all that comes from Vancouver, where the problem is rampant, and I think the legislation the BC government has introduced is valid, and my guess is the rest of the country will follow that in the next year or so.
I don't believe it should be decriminalized. I've seen what addiction can do to people, and it's just a road that no one should go down. It shouldn't be available in any quantity to anyone.
small amounts of street drugs, yeah, should be decriminalized because I don't think it's helpful. Like, it doesn't, punishing people who have an addiction is not the answer to addiction.
Incarcerating people for addictions is wrong. It doesn't help the situation. It costs taxpayers money.
No, not at all. I think it should be criminalized. But I think a lot of it is back to educating people, helping people that are using perhaps excessively, to help them, give them help. I don't think the answer is providing more or allowing it to be legal.
I'm a healthcare professional, so my answer would be no.
I'm a retired police officer. I'd say probably no.
I think so, absolutely.
And why is that? Can you elaborate?
Why is that? Because it's happening anyway, so that it'd be a crime, that there's no reason. I just wish that people did not turn towards these very dangerous medicines and pills, but it's happening, so if you decriminalize, you'll have probably a better product and less danger of death.
I think definitely it should be decriminalized, not legalized, but decriminalized. It's a very huge difference. We can see in some countries in Europe how it affected positively the fact that it's not the police arresting, but more like intervention, social intervention. So I think this is a step that Canada definitely needs in order to act more properly for our society.
Small amounts have been decriminalized de facto, basically, in Vancouver because the police don't charge anybody with that anymore. They can't already deal with that. So I think perhaps that we're seeing a change in that direction, and I think at this point we just have to try anything.
We're now seeing even more COVID rules and restrictions fade away as mask mandates are being lifted in jurisdictions across the country, and Canadians are once again moving about like they did before the pandemic. With cases still occurring in this country, the vast majority of Canadians are fully or at least partially vaccinated, which could result in less people being concerned about it. So, how about you? Our question.
Have you stopped worrying about COVID-19?
I don't think I've stopped worrying about COVID. I'm one of those people that's still pretty aware of it in my group of friends. I mask and I don't go in big groups of people. And I ask my friends who's all coming, and yeah, I'm still very aware.
I have not stopped worrying about COVID-19 because I am an ICU nurse. So I have been watching patients die from COVID for over 2 years now. I am grateful that it seems to have gotten a little bit less severe this go around, but no, I'm not done worrying about it.
I haven't stopped worrying about COVID-19. Even though the vaccines and everything are available, people are still getting sick, and there's still a vulnerable population that's possibly able to still get sick, and people seem to take the vaccine as just an excuse not to be cautious, almost, and I feel like people need to be more cautious when dealing with the elderly and people that are immune compromised, even if vaccinated.
I would say that I've stopped worrying about it just because it's so far out there in the community now, and it's already been through our house. We've done everything we can to get tested, and we're current with our vaccinations. So it's one of those ones where I don't see any point in continuing to worry about it. Just go out there and live your best life and do it in a way that's safe and respectful for everybody around you.
No. Why not? Because there's still lots of it around. An example, there was a party in our building yesterday, and 2 of the people couldn't come because one of them tested COVID. And people are still dying. So no, when I go into a grocery store, when I go inside, I wear a mask.
No, I have not stopped worrying about COVID-19. People are still catching it, and I'm afraid that the government of Nova Scotia and other provinces have lifted all of the mask mandates and everything too early. So I would be worried about getting in large crowds without masks, that kind of thing.
And I hope everybody else continues to be careful with COVID. Otherwise, we could have another terrible disaster of older people like me dying.
A short answer is yes. I'm not sure I ever worried about it terribly seriously. I've tried to be sensible take precautions. I was wearing a mask before it was cool to wear a mask. In fact, some of our public health officials were advising against mask wearing, and I was already wearing one.
Yes, I am worried. And at my age, where I'm much older, I'm a senior, so yeah.
Good to be cautious like that. And how about you? How do you feel about COVID-19?
Well, I'm also worried, and my desire is that it should be over, because it's taking such a long time, causing a lot of inconveniences to people. So my desire that it should be over.
You know, we're back at work sometimes now, at least, and I think honestly that probably most of the public servants here in Ottawa should come back at least some of the time. So no, I think we have to be moving on. It was so rough. So we just have to be moving on psychologically anyways. So I know that some of the mask mandates, like here on buses, I heard today in Ottawa, was being lifted. So that's a sure sign of, everybody's moving on to another situation finally, post-COVID.
No, we have not stopped worrying, but in an outdoor setting, we don't think that it's very dangerous. As soon as we go indoors, we do put a mask, and that's about it. And reasonably careful.
If you are in a crowded area, for example, like in the bus, there's too many people in a small area, and if one person have a COVID, you can get it.
COVID, I still have a mask. So yes, we still get concerned about it. My husband and I have both had all 4 shots, and with the booster, and we've also had COVID. So we feel pretty good, but there's that ounce of protection, because sometimes some people are not always really aboard, and they want to be free. So they do their way, and we're doing ours.
Well, I don't worry about it, but I'm cautious, and it's amazing. In our family, there's been more people catch COVID in the last 2 months than over the 2 previous years. So we're being very careful.
Well, I went to school in Nova Scotia, and I was forced to go back to school and travel during COVID. So it kind of threw me into the craziness of COVID. So my worries have kind of gone downhill a bit, just because I was forced to travel and fly so much during the midst of the outbreak, that my worries have kind of gone downhill a bit.
I was very fearful at the beginning. I wasn't going to get vaccinated. I have friends that aren't vaccinated, and I respect their choice. I did end up getting vaccinated, double, and I think take precautions, wear a mask when you're in crowds. When I'm outside, I don't wear a mask, and I think it's time to live.
I still think about it. It's still there. I don't think it'll ever go away, but I'm feeling a little better about it than I did a year ago.
Yes and no. I actually just booked a cruise, so I guess I'm not worrying that much for it. I mean, my cruise is not until September, and things seem to be going on a downward trend, and I'm fully vaccinated, so I'm kind of going, well, let's hope, eh?
I've stopped worrying about COVID and just tried to do the decent, respectful thing for others. I still wear a mask. I'm going to be going to the visitor center. I need a mask inside, mask. And when I'm part of a group, we have a music group. And out of respect for others, I still like to wear masks and everything and give people a bit of a wide berth. So, and by the way, I think we live in the best place on earth. We complain about this, that, and the other, but we still live here, and it's wonderful. We're lucky.
What new item do finance ministers traditionally wear to deliver a federal budget? New shoes, new socks, or new tie?
I would say new tie.
New tie.
New tie. New socks.
New shoes, new socks, or a new tie? I'm gonna go with a new tie.
I'll go with the new socks.
New tie. New shoes.
I'll say new tie. I have no idea.
I'm gonna have to go with new shoes. New tie.
New tie.
The answer, new shoes.
Oh, good one.
How would anybody know that? You can't see their feet.
During a federal budget, it is considered traditional for federal finance ministers to purchase or wear new shoes for when the budget is delivered. It's an exclusively Canadian tradition, but the origins of how it came to be are not fully known. Although dress shoes are the usual style selected, we've also seen choices that range from mucklucks, worn by John Crosby in 1979, to work boots, worn by Paul Martin in 1994, or running shoes for Joe Oliver's 2015 federal budget. While not every finance minister has followed the practice over the years, most do keep with tradition to the present day.
The Canada Emergency Response Benefit, otherwise known as CERB, was a welcome relief to millions of Canadians who had nowhere else to turn when our local economies went into lockdown because of the pandemic. But these days, many of the recipients of that emergency money are being told they have to pay it back to the Canada Revenue Agency because it was deemed they didn't qualify for it after all. Some of the recipients who thought they were eligible 2 years ago have been given notice, and for them, it could mean facing the same financial uncertainty as before. So, we took this question to Canadians.
Should people who received CERB benefits be forced to pay it back?
That's a great question. I know some people kind of abuse of this system, but I think everybody was living in a crisis, and even if you were not in all the requirements, the mental health and just it was so difficult for everyone. So I think it might be a bonus that we could allow for a lot of people.
Paying it back, I don't know. It's unfortunate. I mean, the thing is that was rolled out in such haste that, and there was such a need for many people. Unfortunately, some citizens probably took advantage of that, or those who didn't qualify. Should they pay it back? I guess they should, and because they didn't qualify to start off with, so they just fell through the cracks. Hopefully, the government will allow these people to pay it back in increments the same way we would, overdue taxes or whatever.
People don't have the money. They use it. They spend it. How they're going to pay back after 2-3 years? Almost impossible. Eh?
I think if you've received something that you're not entitled to, you should give it back.
I think they should, at least some of it, because, I mean, the government was good enough to give it to them because of COVID. So, yes, I think, and for those who didn't have the opportunity of getting the same deal as them, I think yes.
It's something that I guess it's used to help people, and I mean, I don't know when you would be expected to pay that back, but, just, give people a break.
People who receive CERB benefits should not be forced to pay it back. A benefit is defined as something that is given to you or something that you have an advantage of. Therefore, as a Canadian government, they had the advantage to give us this benefit to help us out during an emergency time. However, we are not now in a place to pay it back. We are now in a deficit. We are in a very bad deficit, and asking Canadians to pay back a benefit that was given as an advantage of the Canadian government is a horrible thing to do.
No, I don't think so, because I feel like it was there for that temporary economic support, and people are still having a lot of economic hardship, so I feel like that, I don't know, I don't think that would benefit them at all to give it back. I think that's just going to exacerbate the problems that they're having right now.
If there's someone who's wealthy, yes, and if it's someone who can't afford it, no. So that's just my opinion.
Absolutely not. How much money does the government have, and how much money have... Throughout the pandemic, we were told that we needed at least $2,000 to live for basic needs, and how much are we making on unemployment, on disability, on terminal disability for the rest of your life, or on social services you're not. The amount at the end of the day is negligible, so to claw it back right now seems a bit petty.
Just no. I mean, they were benefits given to people who needed them. No, they should not pay them back.
If there are people who received CERB benefits on top of other payments, and they were receiving a double income stream, then perhaps the system, number one, should have been designed so that didn't happen. And if it did happen, it should be looked into.
Yes, I do. It seems to me that in many cases, probably it's legitimate not to do so, but I think there's also evidence. In fact, I even know of people who have applied and received CERB payments and should not have, and knew that they should not have.
No, I don't think anyone should be forced to pay back government benefits, because that's what they're for, is to help people. Having them pay them back is the opposite of that.
It depends on income levels. So you're not going to try to get that from a family, like let's say a single mother or a single father who's trying to barely provide for his or her family. But you should kind of work out a plan to try to get it back, if you can, from the middle upper class.
That's an interesting question. I understand there's a lot of people who needed the CERB payments to get along. I really don't think it's in the general. I don't really think it's a good thing to start. You giveth, and now you want to take it away. I'm sorry, that doesn't foster a good relationship between politicians and the general public.
Yes. Especially the younger population. That's why we have a labor shortage right now. They were getting paid more than what they would if they went to work. And I do think it helped people. We did require it, but I think for some people they shouldn't have got it.
I think they should be paid back if they weren't entitled to it. You know, I think we've been very fortunate to live in a country where we try and look after people as best we can, and I think the government did a good job. But I also think there's always people that take advantage of the system, and they definitely should have to pay it back.
I think that the people who have an income under a certain threshold should not have to pay it back. They had a lot of living costs that never went away, and I believe we should support them.
No, I don't. No, as long as they were given it, they were honest in applying for it and were in real need of it, and weren't, abusing the system, as it were, which would be taking taxes from our pockets. No, I don't think they should give it back, but let's keep honesty the #1 priority here.
Well, I applied for CERB because I was a student. I just graduated, and I was needing some more money because I was having a hard time finding a job, and I still am post-graduation, don't have a job yet, struggling with that. And they're like, we want your money back. I'm like, I'm moving. I don't have the money to give back to you now. Like, so if you didn't want to give it to me, I wouldn't have taken it in the first place, but now asking for it back, like, I'm a struggling graduated university student. I don't have $2,000 to give back.
Opinion polls have been around longer than most of us can remember. They're there to give us a snapshot on what Canadians are thinking or feeling, especially during election time. They can help us gauge what party or candidate we're going to vote for, while others may not pay attention to them at all. So we hit the streets to ask Canadians how much influence they have on them. Our question:
how much do opinion polls sway your decisions?
Little to none. I appreciate having a pulse on what's going on, but at the end of the day, an opinion poll kind of is just an opinion poll. I need to stay informed and make my own opinions.
I would say I'm pretty impressionable, but I try to maintain my own personal opinion. I do look at Instagram and social media a little bit too much, I would say, so it probably does have some influence.
I don't think I can answer that because I don't think anyone really knows how much opinion polls sway their decisions, but I think probably more than I think they do.
I don't think at all. They don't sway my opinion at all, I think.
The same here. Opinion polls don't really... it's informative. It's interesting to see what other people think, but it's not going to change my point of view.
Honestly, not very much. I like at all of the interviews and take them all as a grain of salt. I mean, there's a lot of people watching them. They're up for a lot of pressure. They're probably schooled on how to talk. You kind of got to take that as what it is.
I'm a person who tries to look at the source material and not follow the opinions. So for that, I read different newspapers and online news sources. I like to go to the news source and then compare what the different news agencies are saying, because you might get a different story from one to the other. So I like to form my own opinion before I start to see what is going on in the community.
It doesn't change my thinking at all. I have my own thoughts. I don't care what anybody else thinks. I have my thoughts, and that's reflected in my voting.
Opinion polls are really just that. They're opinions, and I don't really care what other people's opinions are. I will vote the way I feel it's necessary?
Not really, because I don't trust anything to do with elections, and I think it's hard to find a real answer to any of the platforms, what people are standing for. It seems all motivated to, you know, whatever their directive is. So I try to get as much information as I can and vote from that perspective.
I pay no attention to any opinion poll during elections or at other times, because it depends on who's asking the question and at what moment. And things change. So I assess the situation and I judge my voting in accordance with what I've learned on the individual and the case in point.
Yeah, I listen to the opinions. I think any opinion usually matters. It gives you a bigger insight as to what's going on, and it gives you an ability to make a bit more informed decision.
At times, yes. Because they bring forth maybe information I was unaware of, or how a certain politician stands on certain issues that are important to me.
I take them into consideration when I look at the polls and mull over the reasons that people are giving, and then I make my own mind up. Just basically what I see, what I hear, and what I learn.
Numbers and statistics that you read, I don't put much merit in. I know there's like popularity polls that the politicians look at, like where we're at, how much more canvassing or campaigning we have to do in certain areas. It's a numbers game, right? 50+1, whatever, gets you over the top, or majority rules. But for me, voting, I kind of get a gist of the type of the personality himself, and it's more ideology related to the party itself, more so than the representative or the leader himself.
They might influence it, but I don't think they'll sway it as much. I think you try and listen and try and consume as much as you can and figure out which way you're going to go on all of this, but I can't say the polls really sway me too much.
It sure does. I try to look at what the person can do for the country and for us the people. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, if I take a look at how my district is going, it might affect more strategically my vote. But most of the time, even if I'm sure that my poll is not going to pass, I'm going to go for my values. I think that's very important.
I make my own mind up. I decide what I want to vote for. What other people vote for, what opinion polls point towards, doesn't interest me.
There's usually an element of bias in most opinion polls anyway, so you need to be aware of that bias and make your own decisions.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on CPAC. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.